Was there any question this was a murder?
Travis Sieber is obviously deceased. His whole upper face was covered with blood.
I roll up, I see Detective Gladstone. I knew it was a murder at that point.
An affair that Travis was having with a neighbor that had been going on for several years.
If he had enemies, we weren't aware of any, and it wasn't a kind of situation that Travis would get into where, guns would be involved.
Was the waiting the worst part?
I was pretty much helpless. There was nothing I could do about it to find out who did it.
Hi, I'm Nancy O'Dell. Today's crime expose takes us to rural Washington, where a man was found shot to death in his home. The crime was shocking in its depravity and callousness. Robbery appeared to be the motive, as several items were missing, but as investigators looked closer at the life of Travis Sieber, it wasn't that simple. Travis had many girlfriends, some of them married, and there was the possibility that the killer was a wronged man seeking revenge. It was the evening of March 18th in the rural mountain community of Ryderwood, Washington. A distraught woman discovered her boyfriend dead on the floor of his home and called 911.
The caller reported that she found her on and off boyfriend laying in a pool of blood in the kitchen of his home.
911 emergency, what are you reporting?
He's dead on the kitchen floor.
Okay. He's laying on the kitchen floor?
Dead.
The Cowlitz County Sheriff's Office responded and found 47-year-old Travis Sieber shot in the face at point-blank range.
The patrol officers that were working that morning arrived on scene. They went to the house and they discovered Travis Sieber laying in a pool of blood in his kitchen. It wasn't obvious to them at that point where his wounds were, but they saw that he was obviously deceased. His whole upper face was covered with blood, so it was difficult to discern where the injury was.
The bloody scene suggested that the victim had been shot by an intruder during a home invasion.
Ryderwood is a retirement community of just a few hundred people. Travis lived 15 miles, 20 miles from a populated area, so it's very rural Cowlitz County where he lives, and we have very little crime that occurs in this area. What
did you find around the body?
They discovered a .45 caliber casing next to Mr. Sieber. It was obvious this was not a suicide, as there was no firearm found next to Mr. Sieber. As investigators looked around the home, they noticed that his digital video recorder, his DVR, was missing. His cell phone was missing.
Detective Gladstone examined the body, looking for clues to explain how the murder went down.
Based on the evidence we saw at the scene, it was very apparent that Travis was shot in the face. There was a .45 caliber casing next to him that gave us that indication, and there was no firearm anywhere in the kitchen where Travis's body was, and with the back door being open, and there was blood spatter on portions of the door. That told us is that when Travis was shot in the face, the crime certainly occurred with the perpetrator entering through the back door.
Police searched the home for evidence that might tell them who had killed Travis.
We're looking for any type of evidence. It could be cigarette butts, it could be shoe impressions, fingerprints. We're looking for anything that might have been left at the scene by the suspect. We're looking for any type of tire tread patterns of somebody who entered his driveway.
There was a video surveillance system, but some of it appeared to have been removed.
He had cameras mounted around his house on top of having a DVR systems. Anytime a crime happens in the presence of security cameras, we're certainly always hopeful that we'll have video evidence of the crime. The items that were stolen from the house were Travis's DVR. It was clear that the suspect was concerned that perhaps this crime was captured on video. Travis's phone was stolen from the scene as well.
Investigators walked through the house, hoping the intruder had been careless and left some clues to their identity. On the floor, they saw an envelope.
In Travis's bedroom, some mail items were stepped on, and a very clear shoe impression was left on that envelope.
Police questioned Travis's girlfriend, Kian Maloche, about their relationship. She explained that theirs was an on-again, off-again affair. It was a revelation that detectives made note of.
The caller that called in this incident was Travis's girlfriend, Cayenne. And Cayenne Meloge, being an on and off relationship with Travis and the person who discovered him, she certainly became my first person of interest in this case.
As detectives documented the crime scene, some of Travis Sieber's family arrived, devastated to learn of his death. They included Travis's brother-in-law, a detective with the Thurston County Sheriff's Office.
The initial call was from my mother-in-law that Travis had been killed and that law enforcement was on scene at his house, and that's all she had. So my wife and I headed out there. I roll up, I see Detective Gladstone and other detectives that I'm familiar with when they helped me with my case when I did a homicide case in Thurston County. Because of my position and my rapport, they were able to share specifics about what happened. So I knew who these people were that were investigating my brother-in-law's now homicide. So we knew it was a murder at that point.
Detective Ben Elkins wasn't working the case, but his trained detective mind went into overdrive.
It was surreal. I mean, I was a little emotional, but you put that shield on. If he had enemies, we weren't aware of any, and it wasn't a kind of situation that Travis would get into where, guns would be involved. He didn't do any type of narcotics. He wasn't in the criminal element. He just a very simple man. Travis was easygoing. He wasn't very well off. He had very little. He loved fishing, loved hunting. He loved taking care of chickens. He loved doing the bees where he'd make honey. He was more of a naturalistic person where he liked doing things outside. He was out just to enjoy life.
Detective Gladson then learned information about Travis's private life. According to Cayenne, he was a prolific online dater and had many girlfriends, some of them married. But one liaison in particular stood out.
On the day of the crime, Cayenne told me of an affair that Travis was having with a neighbor. That affair had been going on for several years. The husband was aware that the affair was going on several years ago, but he thought it had stopped. I learned from Cayenne that that affair had not stopped and it was ongoing, and they had even had recent relationships.
I couldn't figure out why. It's like the only thing we could have thought of is, if anything, well, maybe he met this gal and there was some type of jealousy thing, but other than that, it was like there was nothing that made sense for a motive of why he would be killed.
With this news of an extramarital affair, the investigation pivoted in another direction. Detectives needed to determine if an angry husband or a jilted wife may have been the killer.
The husband was aware that the affair was going on.
Investigators discovered that Travis Sieber was a frequent visitor to online dating sites where he met many women, some who were married. And they learned that a married neighbor had been seeing Travis right up until his murder. Detectives contacted that neighbor, Lisa, and her husband, Dieter, to find out if they could be involved. When you spoke with the husband, did he know about his wife's affair?
The husband was aware that the affair was going on several years ago, but he thought it had stopped. I had concerns that perhaps the husband had uncovered that the affair was ongoing and decided to put a stop to it. So we definitely looked at Travis's neighbors as persons of interest right off the bat as well. What I learned from speaking with Travis's neighbor, Lisa Krause, was that he had been in communication with her recently. I could see that there was some friction between the two in recent days, and she wasn't being entirely truthful with me about how friendly their relationship currently was. That certainly raised some concerns for me as well.
So at that point, were the husband and wife cleared of any involvement?
Her husband, I interviewed him as well that same night of the murder, and he was an elderly gentleman who knew about the affair years prior. He seemed like a very truthful guy. He was very forthright, provided me with whatever information I wanted. We were able to rule those two out as suspects in this crime in short order as well.
Meanwhile, the autopsy of Travis Sieber produced information that matched the shell casing found next to the body.
The medical examiner found that there was a .45 caliber bullet lodged at the base of the skull, and that was ultimately removed and turned over to investigators.
Police were able to quickly clear Travis's girlfriend and several other women of any involvement in his murder. Unfortunately, the security DVR had been stolen, so the intruder couldn't be identified.
The goal in a homicide is always not to let the case go cold. And you can't help but have a thought in the back of your head that this case could go cold. And that was a concern certainly I had after 3 weeks of chasing leads that were dead ends.
Meanwhile, the inability to identify the perpetrator was pure torture for Travis Sieber's family.
I was pretty much helpless. There was nothing I could do to find out who did it. I was on the outside. I mean, I was like everybody else. I was a family member. As much as I wanted to, it would be a conflict of interest. And the last thing I wanted to do was cause any problems. When we found out who did it, that person would be held accountable. Detective Gladstone would say, hey, we're still working it. Just kind of reassurance that they're working it. They're doing what they possibly can do and following whatever leads they have. That was a problem. They didn't have a lot of leads.
And just when the investigation appeared to be stymied, Detective Gladson got an unexpected phone call from the Centralia Police Department. Was that the moment the case really turned in another direction?
After 3 weeks of following up on lead after lead after lead, and every lead came to a quick dead end, I received a call from Officer Haggerty that he had somebody in custody that had some knowledge of the murder that occurred 3 weeks earlier in Ryderwood.
Before Detective Gladson was able to even interview the man in custody, another phone tip brought in even more news. The investigation that had been stalled suddenly blew up.
I learned that a co-conspirator on the murder was in custody. Her name was Elizabeth Rogan. She had direct knowledge of the homicide because she was actually present when the murder took place.
Detective Gladson immediately met with Liz Rogan and pressed her for what she knew about the murder. Realizing she was in a tight spot, Rogan proceeded to give up how Travis Sieber was killed by her boyfriend, Tony. What did Liz say happened?
Liz painted this picture that she went to Ryderwood with a guy by the name of Tony, who was her boyfriend, and that she did not know he was going to shoot Travis until it happened.
Liz did everything she could to distance herself from the murder and wouldn't give Tony's full name, but she was willing to speak without an attorney present. Detective Gladson knew he'd need to use every trick in the book to get the truth out of her.
He was fully prepared to spend the rest of his life in prison.
The Cowlitz County Sheriff's Office had identified a person of interest in the murder of Travis Sieber. While Liz Rogan was being held on another charge, detectives were able to interview her in jail, and they leaned hard on her to give up the killer, her boyfriend Tony. But then, Rogan dropped a bombshell. What did Liz say that really started to put it all together?
I asked Liz how Tony knew where Travis lived. Liz indicated that she had been to Travis's house before, so Liz did the driving and she drove to Travis's house.
Rogan told police that she had met Travis Sieber through an online dating site before the murder. And one night, while driving around with Tony, he saw contacts from the dating site on her phone and demanded that they go rob Travis. She claimed that she was unaware it would be more than a robbery.
What brought you up to that house? Can you tell me about that?
Tony kept saying he wanted to rob him, and I kept telling him, no, I don't want any part of it.
Did
He had that gun.
Where is the gun?
I don't know.
She enjoyed the life of crime, but didn't want to get her hands too dirty, and this murder was no different. She participated in this crime fully, but of course tried to stay back from the murder itself.
I've lived in terror for the last 3 I'm sorry if I'm a little emotional. I'm trying to do the right thing here.
Would never take responsibility for her role in this.
Detectives informed Rogan she was going to be charged with murder, and that's all it took for her to give up her boyfriend, Tony. His name was Anthony DePusey Green, whom she had met through an online dating site. Tony had also been arrested on a burglary charge and was in jail when detectives interviewed him.
When I talked to Tony, he didn't seem fearful that he was under investigation for murder whatsoever. He was fully prepared to spend the rest of his life in prison, and he ultimately decided that he did not want to talk to me.
This was a crime of opportunity, and investigators knew Liz and Tony were the perpetrators, but they wanted more. And the shoe print on the envelope found in Travis's home was the ticket. Were you able to match the footprint with Tony's shoe?
They found that tread pattern to belong to a FUBU midnight shoe. Credit cards that were stolen, found in Liz's car, they were used multiple times prior to the murder in places where they would have surveillance systems. I found 5 different videos of Tony, and all 5 of those videos show him wearing FUBU midnight shoes.
So when these people were finally charged with Travis's murder, what did it mean to you personally?
Relieving to bring justice to the family of Travis, and that the person who murdered Travis will be held accountable, to know that justice is going to be served. Tony's just a very, very dangerous man. If he were to be released today, I have no doubt in my mind that he would murder somebody again.
In 2020, Anthony DePuce Green and Elizabeth Rogan faced murder charges in the death of Travis Sieber. Liz Rogan rolled over on her boyfriend and blamed him for the murder.
Okay, who did the shooting, Liz? Anthony?
He walked into that house and shot him.
She pled guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 15 years. Anthony DePuce Green pled guilty to first-degree murder and received 45 years.
Detective Gladstone and that whole department did a phenomenal job. Very happy with the outcome, and I was very relieved. It definitely put closure, especially to my mother-in-law. You know, for us it was good. It was good closure, but most definitely for my mother-in-law, because if it would have went, you know, a year, 2 more years down the road, it probably would have killed her.
I know they were hurting, they were reeling. It's got to be super difficult knowing that someone murdered your son in cold blood and the murderer is still at large. It must be an awful feeling for the family, and it was just great to bring them the closure that they deserved.
This was a case that saw a law enforcement family whose job is to find justice, hoping for it themselves. And now it's time for our safety spotlight. Travis Sieber's family was devastated to learn he had been brutally murdered in what appeared to be a home invasion robbery connected to his extensive online dating history. Liz Rogan met Travis on a dating website, and when she showed up on his doorstep asking to use his bathroom, he politely and unknowingly let his murderer into his home. While online dating is currently one of the most popular ways in which people find love, the process is not without risk. To minimize these risks, consider following these tips to keep you safe. Protect your personal information by avoiding sharing sensitive details like your home address and phone number until you get to know the person well. Look for inconsistencies in the person's profile and communication. Be wary of accounts with overly perfect photos or vague details, as they could be fake. Before meeting a date, you can perform a simple background check online for a small fee. Arrange to meet in well-lit public areas like cafes or restaurants. Avoid secluded locations for initial meetings, and let a friend or family member know where you're going, who you're meeting, and when you expect to return. We all want to be loved, but our safety comes first. I'm Nancy O'Dell. For all of us here at Crime Exposé, please join us next time and stay safe.